So I posted a video the other day talking about how in the beginning stages of your mix, you should really be focusing on just using the faders without any plugins. And I had a lot of people in the comments asking me questions about mix setup and gain staging early on. So I thought I would just walk you guys through the way I normally set up a mix. So when I'm setting up a mix, obviously I need to import the tracks. So if they've provided a tempo map, that's the first thing I'm going to import. You can see that just imported the tempo, the meter changes, and all the markers throughout the session. Then I'm going to import the audio files. Just highlight all those, copy, and open. Now luckily all these tracks were numbered, so they just dropped in the exact order I want them. But if they weren't numbered, or if they weren't named, so I don't even know what the tracks are, I would go through all the tracks and figure out what everything is. And honestly, I'm going to go through and rename these right now anyway, just to clean these names up a bit. Now, when we get to keyboard names, I like to listen to them and name them what they actually sound like, because sometimes, just arbitrary names are not helpful when I get into the mixing stage. Now that everything's named, I'm going to go through and I'm going to color code everything. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to focus on gain staging. And honestly, I just do this by sight. I literally just go through, I look at all the waveforms, I set the measurement to the same every time I do this. So I know approximately, just by sight, how big the waveforms should be for me to get everything to a good starting point for my mix. Now I'm going to go through, and anything that could be a stereo pair, I'm going to make a stereo pair. And anything that's already a stereo pair, I'm going to make sure that it's actually in stereo. That's why I have this open. You can see that's actually in stereo. It's not just straight up the middle. If that was a mono track, it would look like this. Let's make sure the guitar doubles are truly doubles and not just the same performance copied. Yep. That's almost basically mono, but I'll leave it. Yeah, honestly, all of these synth things are pretty much mono. Alright, so the stereo guitars and the stereo backing vocals, I'm going to make those all actual stereo pairs to make it easier when I mix. Alright, now that I got that cleaned up, I'm going to take all these inactive tracks that I no longer need and slide them all the way to the end of the session. So now everything's imported and gain staged, but now we need to get everything routed correctly. So this is one of the reasons renaming everything was important, is because I'm about to import a template, and in that template I can just match the existing track names in the session to the track names of the template, so it imports everything correctly. So now I'm in this menu. First things first, do not import the playlists, so we don't get rid of any of the existing tracks. And we're gonna go here and we're gonna go hit match tracks. And now this is where the renaming things came in handy, because it's just automatically linking up a lot of the tracks. We still have to go through these and double check, but it saves a little bit of time. And some of the tracks that don't exist yet, like all the effect sends and stuff, we need to create. You can see here there's some tracks in the template that we don't actually need here, so we're going to ignore those. Also in the template, my doubles were mono and not stereo like I made them in this template, so I'm going to make those new tracks so I can copy over the effects and the sends and everything. So you can see that just imported a bunch of tracks here. Now we got to organize a little bit. Now you can see importing that also dropped a bunch of plugins on most of the tracks, plugins that I find myself using all the time. But there's also some tracks that didn't exist in the template, like synths. I never know what I'm going to get sent, so I just leave that blank. And these samples that they also sent us. So now we need to make sure that everything's routed, and anything that I would normally use the same plugins on, I'm just going to copy those over. Now we're gonna get rid of these excess tracks. So there, everything's routed. I got a bunch of plugins queued up that I'm likely gonna use. Now that the mix is set up, I usually do this part of it the night before. That way when I go to start mixing, everything's ready and I can literally just start mixing. Now the next day when you go out to start your mix, you're gonna open your session, you're not gonna start mixing yet. The first thing I want you to do is open up whatever you use to listen to music, listen to any one of your favorite tracks, and set your interface volume for your monitors or your headphones to wherever that song sounds comfortable. Now the song you just listened to is a finished mastered song. So now that you have things at a comfortable volume for that, you need to turn the volume on your interface up substantially before you start mixing. The reason for this is obviously mix level is going to be very different from master level. And if you have your monitoring volume set to the same volume as a finished mastered track, you're going to end up pushing all of the tracks in your session way too far and clipping the master bus. So by setting your monitors to a comfortable volume and then raising them significantly for the actual mix, you'll ensure that you don't end up clipping your master by mistake. And now that we've done that, now we can start mixing. And this is where we do what I mentioned in the other video, which is start just with your faders. Don't open up any plugins too early. Just get a balance with the volume faders. Spend a lot of time on this. Make sure that everything is in a spot that adjusting faders won't help it anymore before you start adding plugins. By starting the mix that way, you will get a lot better results overall. But doing all of this setup ahead of time is going to make sure that when you actually get to the mixing stage, you're not going to run into any problems. You're just going to be able to start mixing and just mix the song until it's done.